You're listening to the Holo Health Podcast with Alex Cottingham and Trevor Deal. We know that health is hard and confusing, primarily because we lived it. It's part of our story, and we struggled for years until we discovered a better way. On this podcast, we cut through the noise of culture, talk about health the way God designed it, and how you can pursue it. If you're a Jesus follower who cares about your health, then you're in the right place. Get ready for the tangible and actionable steps to build a body, mind, and soul that you're proud of, or as we like to say, so that you can become truly healthy. Let's dive into the show. Listeners, welcome back to the Holo Health Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about nutrition. Everyone wants to know, what should I be eating? How much should I be eating? What diet should I be doing? What should I stop doing? What should I start adding in? It's confusing. We know it's confusing. That's why one of our 7 habits of health is eat clean. We want to help you minimize the confusion of nutrition and learn practical application pieces that not only help you like what you see in the mirror, but have the energy throughout the day and steward the body well through foods that God has given us and we see in nature. Alex, we're going to be talking about EC Synkowski's 10 principles of nutrition. And we're going to talk about this, but I want you to share a little bit of the why. Why are we bringing this? Why are we talking about EC Synkowski? Who is she? Let's dive into that a little bit for the listeners before we jump into specifically the 10 principles and kind of unpacking those.
Yeah, the reason why we're doing this is because EC Synkowski, which is the founder of these 10 principles we're going to go through, we do not claim this to be ours, makes things simple and clear. Nutrition is super confusing, and we don't claim to have all the answers or everything originate with us. There's really some pioneers in each area of health that we really look to and try to synthesize it for, okay, what does this mean to follow Jesus in terms of nutrition? What does it mean to follow Jesus in terms of my movement? So there's many other pros or experts out there in the field with, for example, movement or abiding in the word or community. But with nutrition, this is one of them. And she has 10 principles that make things very, very easy. And this isn't like tips and tricks. What this is, hey, these are the basics. This is just truth. This is capital T truth, how the body works.
Yeah.
And what we are going to do is we're going to contextualize it for true health in God's design. So I think everybody should just know these just as much as like 2 + 2 = 4 or order of operations with math. It's like, hey, this is just the basics of once you understand these, it will empower you to go much further faster.
Yeah, Alex, I like how you said that. Just a little bit more context as I'm pulling up the graphic of the 10 principles of nutrition for us to just have on the screen for those that are going to be watching. Obviously on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. But if you're listening, we're going to share those, a link to those specifically in the show notes that you can dive into a little bit more. But this is important. And the reason it's important, just like Alex said, is this is a framework. Hey, let's remove the confusion by ushering in clarity. And as we usher in clarity, we can start to build practical application around nutrition. And so, again, these are far less the specific tactics. These are far less the specific, telling you exactly what to eat and how to do it. This is more like, hey, here's the framework. Here's what I need to understand when it comes to nutrition. And then we can start to look at, okay, from here, let me make some decisions on how I apply eating clean in our lens. And ultimately, it's like, hey, what do you need to understand so that you can answer your own nutrition questions? Coming back to these, having this framework, understanding these truths, like you said, Alex. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, awesome. Again, listeners, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we'll link it in the show notes below. We definitely encourage you to go look at this. This is a link to her website. Shout out EC Synkowski. She has been in the CrossFit space forever and was encouraging and exploring her own like dietary understanding and frameworks and principles. And she arrived at these conclusions. She went down the diet, the yo-yos, the rabbit trails of different aspects of nutrition, and ultimately ended up here. And so I would encourage you to even listen to an episode that I'll link in the show notes that she goes even further into the 10 principles of nutrition. But again, this is a framework and for us to understand. For those people who don't want to listen to the whole episode, you are for some reason you're that kind of person. You listen to like the first 10 minutes and then something happens at work or in the car and then you're at the next place and you never come back. Here are 3 quick takeaways that I would share with you that you should know that are going to be unpacked in further detail in this episode. But here's 3 takeaways for you before we jump in if you end up not listening to the whole episode. 1, eat real foods. 2, in sensible portions. 3, make it sustainable. Eating clean wrapped up in a nutshell. These principles wrapped up in a nutshell. 1, eat real foods. 2, in sensible portions. 3, make it sustainable. All right, Alex, we're going to dive into the 10 principles of nutrition. I don't want to read all of them. I'd rather just read one and unpack it. And so we can kind of riff on each of them. I don't want to just go on and on and on and on. But again, before we even dive into that, hey, we're looking at this through the lens of true health. What does that mean? God's design of health. God's design for us to eat real foods, okay, foods that are found in nature. What are foods that bring energy to our body, that allow us to steward our body well? But then we're also going to take a step outside of these 10 principles and say, what else is there? And we'll talk a little bit about that, on the back end of this episode. You ready?
Do it.
Let's do it. Number 1 of the 10 principles of nutrition says the quantity of your food that you eat in calories determines your weight. Alex, this one's pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, this is as simple as it gets. Your body needs a specific amount of calories to live. And in order to maintain the weight you have, you need to eat that amount of calories. So, for example, if you want to lose weight, you need to eat less than that. And if you want to gain weight, you need to eat more than that. It is really that simple. When you just are looking at weight loss, you just need to be in a caloric deficit. But how much you eat determines that, and it's just measured in calories. So a lot of people get confused by that of like, oh, I need to be eating these certain foods, or I need to be eating certain proportions food.
Mm-hmm.
You could be eating 1,800 calories of just straight Oreos. Now we'll get into body composition and overall health with micronutrients and how that impacts that. But overall, if you are eating less than you are burning, you will lose weight. If you are eating more than you are burning, you will gain weight. That is the simple relationship, and people just need to understand that is just how the body works.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it is a math equation. Calories in versus calories out. So
Yeah.
again, number 1 is the quantity of food you eat in calories determines your weight. Good summation there, Alex. Number 2, the quantity of food that you eat in macronutrients determines your body composition. Alex, before you jump on this one, you just want to clarify macronutrients are the 3 areas of nutrients that are the biggest needs in the body to function as it's designed to. That's going to be protein, carbohydrates, and fats. All right, Alex, I want you to share a little bit more about kind of the reason behind point number 2, principle number 2.
Yeah, there's a difference in 2 key concepts here: weight and body composition. Someone could eat, let's say the average person has a 2,000 calorie diet. If you could eat 2,000 calories in the right proportions of carbs, proteins, and fats and look like a certain way, person A over here, or it could be way off and look way different with proportion B. Because when it comes to body composition, it means how your body looks. It's essentially just muscle to fat, how much muscle you have, how much fat you have, and how much your body holds on to each. So if you are eating 2,000 calories and you're losing weight, but you're still not looking the way you may want to look, it's because the quantity or the ratio of your carbs, proteins, and fats may not be what your body needs. And this is impacted by genetics, age, season of life, and exercise and movement demands. If you are doing more strength-based work or want to gain muscle, you need to have a protein-rich diet. We recommend 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. That might need to go more towards the 1.0. But if we're just looking for just optimal well-being, we're fine at the 0.7 range. But that body composition, or how you look, your muscle to fat ratio, is highly going to be determined on the ratio of carbs, proteins, and fats. Generally speaking, this is what you find, this is what I learned in exercise science and undergrad and all that stuff, is the general prescription for most people is 40% carbs, 30% protein, 30% fat. So when you go back to point number one, if I need to be eating 2,000 calories to either be in a caloric deficit or maintain my weight, then I'm going to, it's just a math equation. 40% of that is carbs, 30% is protein, 30% is fat. And that's it.
In grams, for the record. 40%, 30%.
Yeah, you have to convert it from calories to grams, which is a little nuanced, but it's pretty simple math equation.
Right. And at this point, I don't want people to get confused. Remember what we said as we're going through all of these. These are frameworks. These are principles to help you understand your nutrition questions. So we're saying you're asking the question, how do I build muscle? How do I tone up? People say that all the time. How do I lose body fat? Well, the quantity of your food that you eat, macronutrients, the macronutrient profile of your commonalities of the foods you eat are going to determine your body composition. So this one specifically, Alex, like you said, is really determined by what's your goal. A lot of people want to build muscle and lose body fat. If that's your goal, we need to look at the we need to look at the macronutrient breakdown so that that body composition goal can we work towards. And so, like you said, but there's people that really, think of some of the blue zones. They live an extremely long and full life, right? There's a lot of vitality. There's a lot of energy, ability to go do. There's a lot of freedom, but they're not consuming that 0.7 to 1.0 grams of protein per pound of body weight, but they are getting an adequate, they're getting the right quality of food. They're getting the right quantity, which we'll talk about in a minute. So a lot of this is really going to come down to your goal specifically for number 2 for macronutrients. Were you going to add something there, Alex?
No, I just don't want to get too wordy and fluffy. That I want people to remember how much you eat determines your weight. If you are overweight or think you're overweight, you're eating too much. It's as simple as that. If you're underweight, you're eating less than. If you don't look the way you want to look, your body composition is off, is because your macros are off. Like you could be eating the right amount, but the quantity or the ratios of your carbs, proteins, and fats are off. That's as simple as I could put it.
Yep. Number 3, the third principle is timing only matters to the extent it affects quantity. And I'll take this one, Alex. The reason people ask this all the time, when should I eat these foods? Should I not eat these foods? You cannot blanketly state a specific timing prescription for every single person. It doesn't work like that. Look, that's not real. That's not sustainable. We'll talk about sustainability later in the principles. Timing only matters when it affects the quantity. And what I mean by that is if there's an excess of quantity, as in you're intaking more calories than you're expending, that's going to lead to weight gain, then the timing matters. Typically, just to give you an example, this is going to look like it's later in the day and you're eating later in the day. And because it's later, you're tired, you're eating later, you've pushed it off to later, whatever it might be, you consume more calories than you would if you had something earlier. So the timing only matters to the extent in which it affects quantity in the excess fashion.
Trevor, the first 2 things I think about in relevance of this is intermittent fasting and post-workout shakes. So many people, there was the common belief back in the day, and I believe this for a long time, that there's a 30 to 60 minute window right after you work out that you need protein because that's your body's fastest absorbed. You got to get whey protein in, which in reality, science has debunked that. As long as you're getting the proper amount of protein in that day, it's good.
Yeah.
Going and then talking about intermittent fasting, timing only matters to the extent it affects quantity, meaning timing is when I eat. And if I restrict when I eat, then I'm going to reduce the quantity. Meaning, if I can only eat from 12 to 8 or 12 to 6 is a short window, that's just restricting the amount of time. And if I can only shove so much food in that window, then I'm going to eat less because I've restricted the timing. Versus if I can eat all day, people are generally going to eat more because they have a bigger window. So as long as you understand point number 1, I know how much food to eat in general, and 2, making sure I'm hitting carbs, proteins, and fats in the right proportions, that's great. Trevor, here's what I'll say as far as God's design of health. I've talked with many people that say, I hate tracking. How many calories do I need? How do I know macros, all that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
God has made it very, very simple. He has given us a remarkable, beautiful body that regulates our optimal intake through our hunger and fullness hormones. You know when you have eaten enough, when you are no longer hungry. We don't eat till we're full. We eat till we're no longer hungry. I literally just had this yesterday. I was eating salmon, Brussels sprouts, and rice. And I was eating, and I was eating, and I was eating, and then I was no longer hungry anymore. It's like I could keep eating until I'm full, but I was about 80%. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. And God has given me those hormones to be able to recognize I no longer need any more energy. My body is good for now.
Yeah.
And then when the tank is full, the appetite kicks in and I eat more. But if I listen to those, it's great. And here's where we get a little sideways with culture is that we let a man-made standard or the time of the day or the visual cue of going to the bar or going to a restaurant or walking in the kitchen be our impetus for eating rather than listening to our God-given hormones. Your number one signal for what your body needs should be your appetite and fullness hormones. That's it. Let that, because that is God given. Humans have thrived for a long, 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 long time relying off of those. But when you look at the history of technology and how time was made and then clock and schedule and how busy we were, and then breakfast, lunch, and dinner, God didn't design breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That is a man-made construct because it's convenient to eat. We can cycle our days around those, yada, yada, yada. But I primarily tell people eat when you're hungry and stop when you're done and listen to those because those are God-given.
Yeah. We're going to do another episode that piggybacks off of this one. So it'll come out the following week, which is really centered around more of the application piece of the 10 principles of nutrition, how we here at Holo Health recommend how we work with our clients, how we work with members of the collective, members that go through our program at the church. How do we suggest they apply some of these these principles, just so that this episode is not 2 hours long, because it easily could be if we get into the principles and application. But you're spot on, Alex. I mean, we have to be able to understand, okay, we are designed with a hunger hormone and then a fullness hormone. And so we had to be able to understand that and then recognize that's the case.
I think we actually have more. I don't know off the top of my head because I'm not that smart, but I've heard we have 8 appetite and fullness hormones. I've heard we have 20. We have more than 1 or 2, and they're just a synergistic web that all works together when the body is thriving. And that is just another way in how incredible God has made the body. Let's go to number 4. I'll hit it. The quality of food as determined by micronutrient density determines your health. Here's what this means in layman terms. The more nutrient dense foods you eat, the better overall health you will have. This is not necessarily meaning looks, weight, or body composition. This is meaning when you go to the doctor and your blood levels and your cholesterol and your LDLs and HDLs, this is what that means. That if
Yeah.
some of those is what's going on and that's your primary focus, that's okay.
Yeah.
But you need to be focused on nutrient dense foods. The more processed foods and fatty foods, those are going to lead to a lower overall internal health with some of those biomarkers. But when you eat nutrient dense foods, which are whole, clean, real foods found in the aisles of grocery stores, that's when it's going to impact your overall health when you go to a doctor.
Yeah. Another way people say this, Alex, is metabolic health, which is exactly what you just emphasized there. It's kind of messing with those biomarkers. And when we think about metabolic diseases, things that come on, obviously from, as little as obesity to different autoimmune diseases or cancerous forms of disease, then these are a driver for those things. And the reason is because we were designed. This is not even in the 10 principles of nutrition. This is Holo Health speaking kind of contextually for true health. Is God created both animal and plants for us to enjoy, to nourish our bodies, for us to rule and subdue over the earth, right? Talks about that in Genesis. We see it again in Daniel as Daniel eats foods of the earth that God gave him instead of the king's foods, which are going to be more indulgent foods. So we know in the context of true health, hey, if we're nourishing our body with the foods God gave us that are found in nature, which are the quality foods full of micronutrient dense food or density, then we're going to have better overall metabolic health. And we're going to push away that chance or the likelihood of metabolic disease, just like you're saying, Alex.
Trevor, I'll get very just practical and just say straight up, you will feel better. That's it. Like, yes, your levels will increase. Your doctor will say, wow, what did you do? But when you eat nutrient dense foods, you will feel better. So many people, they'll say, I feel bloated, I feel blah, I feel lack of energy, I just feel like something's wrong with my hormones. And some of that may be true. And there might be another area of health like stress or a a a a relational wedge. But you will feel better. That's it. Like you'll have more energy, you'll have more mental clarity because you will have the nutrients your body needs to do what God is calling you to do.
Yep.
So I always come back to stewardship. Like I'm stewarding this body well by giving it the nutrients it needs so I can do what God's calling me to do better.
Yeah. And the reason you're going to feel better is because there's less of the ultra processed foods and added sugars in those real foods, those foods found in nature, which are a large cause of the feeling like crap and the metabolic disease that you might be experiencing. Good note there, Alex. Hey, just to let you know, listeners, there are more than a dozen hormones that regulate hunger and appetite. The main ones that you hear are ghrelin and leptin. Ghrelin is the one that increases appetite and signals the brain that you're hungry. Leptin does the opposite. It decreases appetite and tells the brain when you're full. All right. To keep going, Alex, I love number 5 because I think it applies to nutrition, but it really applies to true health too. Number 5, it says it is never one thing. A lot of people believe that if I do this one thing, it's going to solve the problem that I have, which is more than likely that what they're talking about is a weight problem, right? If I just do intermittent fasting, it's going to solve the weight problem. If I just eat more protein, it's going to solve the weight problem. If I don't eat out as much, it's going to solve the weight problem. We just went through 4 things in nature and just already talked about, hey, quantity that you eat in calories is important. Quantity that you eat in macronutrients is important. Timing only matters to the extent of it affects quantity. The quality of your foods are important. So obviously we're talking about multiple things that influence influence the result that nutrition brings from your overall health, both contextual for your goals and then your metabolic health. So it's important to remember that it's not just one thing. You can't just choose to do one thing and it's going to solve, quote unquote, your problem when it comes to nutrition, which again, more than likely is a weight problem.
Trevor, let me take a different stab at it because you're spot on. You're talking about in general, like a very broad, which is you're spot on. Let me read a quick snippet on what EC was getting at. She said, the body needs close to 40 essential nutrients and is also positively affected by thousands of other non-nutrient health protective compounds like phytochemicals. She says there's never one nutrient, for example, like saturated fat, that is good or bad. It's the collective amount of all the nutrients you eat in relation to your genetics and other factors like your stress and training that determines your outcome. So kind of just getting more granular to exactly what you just said, that it's very easy for people to take a position of saturated fat is the problem. Cholesterol is the problem. Red meats is the problem, right? It is never just one thing. If someone is telling you that one thing is the problem, proceed with caution because it is the collective amount. Just like how we're saying it's never just one diet or one way, it is the collective whole of all of your habits. But she's talking about nutrients that, for example, I was talking with a guy, if he's listening, he knows exactly who it is, that he follows this holistic chiropractor. And I think that one of the points actually gets to this. All in all, the holistic chiropractor had a newsletter talking about how glucosamine or some sort of like supplement was like, hey, fall is coming, the flu is about to increase, you need to stock up on this glucosamine because that's the one thing that's going to help protect you and feel better and revolutionize your health, blah, 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 blah. And right underneath that was like,
make $1.
it was like, buy my supplement for $49.99. And I'm like, okay, that is just someone who, yes, is health, finding a spin and not demonizing, but I would say exploiting an opportunity of people who don't really know, and it's like, buy my supplement because it's going to help protect it, whatever. Here's the thing, it's never the one thing, because if that is the solution to the problem of not wanting to get the flu, then you need to look at your sleep, you need to look at the other nutrients you have, you need to look at your overall stress levels, because those are all going to impact how your body manifests
Yeah.
viruses and bacteria when it's in the body. It's called antigens. So it's never just one thing.
Yeah, you hit it well, and we're not going to dive into this too, but when it comes to true health, that's why we talk about health. True health is health in every area because it's not just
Yeah.
one thing. You can't just eat right and then you're healthy. You can't just work out and then you're healthy. You have to look at the rhythms that produce a healthy body, mind, and soul. We look at in Scripture, God designed these rhythms for us to experience abundant life, and so we can't just do one thing. Right? That's what culture wants us to think. So good summation there, Alex. I love that both angles of attack we provided. Number 6 is, man, it's just so straightforward when it comes
Yes.
to
Yes.
diets. We Before I say this, we aren't a big proponent of a diet, but we're not against you adhering to a specific dietary approach. And so number 6 is going to really tack on kind of understanding why. Some of our foundation behind that. But number 6 from EC's 10 principles is all diets control quantity to varying levels of precision. So ultimately, every single diet, whether it's paleo, whether it's intermittent fasting, whether it's macros, whether it's Mediterranean, whether it's
Keto,
carnivore,
plant-based.
keto, exactly. So they all allow or are designed to allow the user, the person who's implementing, the one who's doing the diet, to control the quantity of foods that you're eating, right? With carnivore, right, you're limiting some of the other food groups that do add calories when you eat them. So you're limiting calories with um, intermittent fasting, just like Alex said, rather than restricting the types of food, you're restricting the time. And so by restricting the time, the kind of vision behind it is that you have less time and you're going to get more full by eating more foods, ideally eating less in quantity. The same goes for paleo. The same goes for Mediterranean. You're eliminating certain areas of foods or certain time orientations around food to control quantity without weighing and measuring foods. Okay. If you're doing macros, obviously you're weighing and measuring your foods. So this is how they do this. But the reason, so that's why they control quantity to the varying levels of precision, right? It's some are more prescriptive on exactly what you should do to measure quantity and control it. And some are way less prescriptive, saying, hey, if we eat, you eat the carnivore diet, you just eat meat. Okay. That's like very vague. And you can still actually eat in a caloric surplus while just eating one type of food. So that's the context that all the diets are made and kind of built to control the quantity of food. Now, it's important to note that not all diets, majority of diets, dietary approaches, some of the ones we just mentioned, are focused on restricting certain foods. We're not advocates for restriction because Eat Clean, which is one of our 7 habits of health, is focused on uh, primarily prioritizing whole, clean, real foods while enjoying pleasurable foods too, right? There's balance between both. And actually, number 7 of her principles talks about sustainability, which we'll get into in just a second.
The only thing I would add is there's 2 important words in this. It says all diets control quantity to varying levels of precision. I would have you focus on the word control and the word quantity, because here's what they're saying is that all diets can be plotted on a continuum of high control to low control. Paleo, low control, you can do a lot and you can basically eat however much you want, but these are the foods you eat. Over here to tracking macros, very high control because you were doing everything and all the diets can be placed in that continuum somehow. Here's the deal. Tracking your macros works because it is almost near 100% control and you are knowing exactly to the calorie how much your body's eating and exactly to the gram how many macros your body's getting. But most people, 99.9% of people, do not want to track their macros for their entire life. It's not sustainable. It is very educational and helpful in a short stint in a quick season. So I'm not against it. But it's what am I learning from that? So from there, it's a matter of, okay, what do I want to do from there? But it comes down to control. And because here's the deal, I don't know how many calories I ate yesterday. I know I'm within a range, and I know I'm within the range of my macronutrients because of how I feel and my weight and all the other markers and how I look and how my clothes fit. So it definitely is a dance that you learn, but I don't want to have something that is super high controlling every single day because I'm going to be so focused with that, it can become overwhelming and I'm not focusing on other areas. Yeah, it can be quicker and there are tips and people are like, you can do it in less than 5-10 minutes. And there probably is. But right now, that's not my priority with True Health because I'm balancing a lot of other stuff right now.
Yeah, again, next week we're going to get into some of the practical applications of this and then even more contextualizing for True Health. But I love that statement there, Alex. Number 7 says sustainability is the most important factor in diet selection. We don't want to spend too much time on this, but let's just be honest. Hey, if you want to get actual results and keep them for the long term, then sustainability has to be key. And some dietary approaches, they're just not ideal in terms of your personal application, your season of life, your ability to adhere to what the protocols are for the diet. And so if you can't adhere to it, then it's not sustainable. And we say that true health is sustainable, right? So our focus is teaching you, specifically around nutrition, teaching you how to eat clean in a sustainable way that allows you to see the benefits from a weight management standpoint, from a how you look in the mirror standpoint, and then again, overall energy and metabolic health being in high capacity. So sustainability is the most important factor, but a lot of these diets are just going to cause you to not be sustainable. It's hard to adhere to. It's not applicable in every setting. And so this is arguably, I would say, one of the top priorities when it comes to your nutrition approach, your eating habits, sustainability being key. Alex.
Yeah, I would echo and I would add, give yourself time. Sustainability is the long route, is the slow route. Most people that I have worked with or am working with want to see results in pretty much 3 months. They're like, I want to get the chiseled beach body. I want to drop 60 pounds in about 3 to 4 to maybe 5 months when they're in their upper 30s, mid 40s, mid 50s. And it's taken them years and years of compounding habits to get them to where they are. Many times, and I just had this conversation, I recommend to say, hey, we need to throw the timeline out the window right now. That is not serving you well. What we need to focus on is focusing on the habits that we're adding in and that we can do for a lifetime, because this isn't just a 3-month coaching stint. This is a, how do I build tools and skills for a lifetime? How am I contextualizing these 10 principles into the life of Alex or into the schedule of Trevor? So sustainability is, I would agree, probably one of the most important things, but it will I tell people, give me a year. Give me a year. Health is not linear. It's not up and to the right every single week. You are going to take steps forward and take steps back, and that's okay. That's sustainable as long as you keep trending in the right direction.
Yeah. As we're rounding third with the last couple of these 10 principles, again, we're going to put a lot of different resources in the show notes. And just to kind of plug the Whole Look Collective, again, that's a community where we're helping one another be accountable to pursue the truly healthy life Jesus follows. In there, we give you access to coaches. So you can ask additional questions to Alex or myself on, hey, how do I apply this sustainability thing for myself? And then we get to have that conversation. So if you need more time and want more time or access to a coach, in addition to daily workouts, nutrition guidance, meal recipes, rhythms, prayer routines, Bible study plan, etc., resources that help you build health in every area, then we would suggest joining the Whole Look Collective. That link is in the show notes below. Alex, number 8, 9, and 10, let's go down to some of these and just kind of hit on these really quickly because I think they're pretty straightforward. Number 8 says the universal diet problem is processed foods. I kind of mentioned it earlier, but no one's overeating the whole, clean, real foods, the baby carrots, the ground turkey, the apples, etc. The common issue is the overconsumption of ultra processed foods, which these foods remove water and they're typically adding more trans fats or saturated fats as well as added sugars into the foods, which what's happened there is it makes them more calorically dense. It just makes them have a higher total calorie count. And then they're more what EC denotes as hyper palatable, but really this just means like, hey, they're easier to eat. They're more addicting. Sugar is more addicting. They're actually created to be more addicting and easier to consume more and more and more and more of. Example is, hey, a cupcake. If you eat a cupcake, it's awesome. There's a time and a place for that, but it's probably going to be around like 300 to 400 calories. And for you to eat 300, 400 calories of fruit, you're eating over a plate full. So these are just found everywhere. And the problem is that it's just all too easy to eat these because in our modern, busy, on the go lives, they're readily available and we're not prioritizing the whole, clean, real foods or setting our environment or ourselves up for success to eat those. So the reason this is a problem is because it moves us away from God's design and it moves us towards feeling like crap, being overwhelmed, and not stewarding our body well. Just being bluntly honest. Again, we're going to talk about in the next episode how to kind of manage the tension of both the quality and the nutrient dense foods and the more indulgent foods. But the universal diet problem that kind of comes back to why are we overweight? Why do we have less energy? Why can't I get this under control? Is ultra processed foods.
Yeah, this is a new problem. This isn't a problem you find in scripture because of technology, because of refrigeration, because of cars, because of stores now that didn't have processed foods back then. You pretty much within the first few days of getting food, you would eat it. That going back to point number 5, it's never just one thing to solve it. It's the culmination of all the nutrients and all the nutrient dense foods. But number 8 is there is a universal diet problem that there is a ask any doctor and they're like, if you overeat processed foods, you will have a weight problem and a health problem and probably body composition issues. But if no one is overeating the apples, ground turkey, and cashews, and you will have higher levels of health. So
Yeah.
processed foods, yeah, they definitely need to be addressed.
Yeah. Alex, you take number 9 and I'll take number 10.
Number 9 says your diet can't be validated. You'll never know your perfect diet or if everything you are doing is okay or right. There's uncertainty in nutrition due to genetics and other factors like stress and environment, which cannot be predicted or tested comprehensively. But we do know trends. So we don't know perfect diet. We don't know everything. There is uncertainty, but there are trends such as how much I'm eating, what types of food am I eating, that have markers of health, composition, performance that are all associated with longevity. All of that to say, you will never have 100% confidence in what you're doing that is going to get you to where you want to go. That is reality because every body is different and every body metabolizes differently. Genetics, strain, performance. But what we do know is that quality and quantity matters. Whole, clean, real foods matter. Nutrients matter. And generally, when you prioritize what we do know, it will trend you towards the right direction. You could do everything and get everything really pinpoint, and then all of a sudden you're 5 pounds heavier, you're 2 pounds lighter. It's not a perfect math equation because bodies are different and that's life, but these principles do matter. So I guess if I had to contextualize this, is saying, hey, we are not in control. God is in control, but that still means that we have a responsibility to steward well, but we should not be so fixated on a number, and we should be more fixated on a way of life because it cannot be 100% validated.
Great summation there. Number 10, there are diminishing returns on attaining perfection. I love using the analogy, Alex, with clients and with people I talk to about the funnel, right? Let's think about if you're trying to put oil in your car, you've got a funnel, and at the top of that funnel, it's really wide, it's broad. And as it goes down towards the cap to go into your car, it gets more narrow, it gets more tight. And this is the same perspective or visual that you should put towards pursuing perfection in the context of nutrition or your goal. Optimizing that is going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of energy, and figuring out the perfectly optimized diet is honestly probably outside of what you actually want to do. You don't want to put in that energy or effort. And I'll talk about how this is contextualized to true health in a moment, but there are just a lot of other things outside of nutrition that that are important factors, one in true health, but really trying to contextualize it and pursue your goal, what you would say is quote unquote perfection, that take also a lot of time and attention, whether that's sleep, whether that's training, whether that's reducing stress, whether that's planning and preparing. So there's a lot of ton of different things that cause diminishing returns because it's going to affect other areas. And this is how it ties back into true health, is when we are so, for lack of a better way to say it, hell-bent and determined to get perfection in the mirror, we are neglecting the other areas of our health. There are diminishing returns for our mind and for our soul. If I'm so focused on becoming something in the mirror that I'm dialed in on my nutrition, I'm dialed in on my performance and my training, okay, then I, at some capacity, am neglecting my invitation to abide in Jesus, my invitation to rest and remove hurry, the invitation to be in community, to live authentically in biblical community, to embrace purpose and realize, hey, I'm doing this, but I'm doing this for other people. I'm losing the opportunity to pursue health in every area. Yes, you can build a body that you like in the mirror and love the inner peace that you feel. But if you're pursuing some orientation of a goal, there are diminishing returns in your life holistically from attaining, quote unquote, that goal. We like to say it simply, Alex, and this will kind of button that up. Hey, I want to get a 500-pound back squat, but that doesn't matter if your marriage sucks. That doesn't matter if you have no relationship with Jesus and you're ridden with anxiety. Contextualize for, hey, I have 5% body fat, but no one loves me. I don't have authentic community, and I experience absolutely no purpose in my life. So remember that both in the reality of nutrition, like EC is talking about, but also in the vein of true health, there are diminishing returns on attaining perfection.
I'll just give one quick example. I see this a lot in weight loss, and I see this a lot with people who have made really good progress, but then, for example, they want to get rid of the little tiny love handle on the side. They have a six-pack, they look really good, but like you said, that funnel, the farther away you are from a goal, the easier it is to get there, but the closer you get, the harder it gets. Meaning, when I am 400 pounds, I have more weight to lose, and it's easier to start losing weight. But if I am 150, wanting to get down to 145, the effort and the sacrifice is going to take way much more energy than what it was to lose the initial pounds. So in context of true health, I ask people this all the time. What's it worth? What's it worth to you, and what would you need to sacrifice to get there? And you said that spot on. I might need to control with 100% certainty what my nutrition is. So I need to start tracking my macros for 2 months to get those last 5 pounds to remove that love handle. But at the expense of what? Taking my anger out on my kids because they're impeding my control there? Or I'm so fixated on this love handle that, like you said, I'm not being kind or gentle? Or the other question is, why do you want to get rid of that? Like, why?
Yeah.
Because it's never good enough, or you have a specific number in your head that you want to re-enter that you did in high school. Do you want to get back to that high school weight? It's like, I tell people all the time, just stop. If you are at a healthy, optimal range and you can do what love is requiring you to do and you feel comfortable in your skin, the extra 5 pounds don't matter.
Yeah.
You know what matters more? Is that 30 minutes in the morning when you spend time with Jesus so you can be a better husband and father.
Yeah. It's keeping the main things, which we talk a lot about here, right? It's our faith. It is your health, but it's also your family or your relationships, right? They're more important things than looking a certain way in the mirror. And you hit the nail on the head. And I'll share this. Your healthiest weight, your lowest body fat percentage, or like your leanest self, is probably not your healthiest self.
Amen.
So,
but your healthiest self does lead to your optimal weight.
Yep, exactly.
It's the order of priority.
Exactly. So we hope you enjoyed us unpacking the 10 principles of nutrition. Again, just to give full credit where credit is due, these are all created by EC Synkowski. I'm going to link all of her kind of content and basically her website to be able to see the 10 principles, and then her Instagram page for you to just dig in a little bit further. I hope you tune in, to next week's episode, where we're talking about, in the context of true health and our 7 habits of health, how do we apply some of these frameworks and truths around nutrition into our life without it being all consuming, without attaining perfection, but striving for health in every area. We hope you enjoyed, again, this conversation. Alex, I'll let you lead the listeners what we want them to know.
You're a legend. See ya.
See you guys.